a look at the UK Minister of Defence, Gavin Williamson, who has now, well, I guess he's not Minister of Defence anymore. Theresa May has sacked him. She has fired him. And all I can say is that, karma really is a bitch. Because this guy was just absolutely nuts, in my opinion. I mean, you'll get into his track record, and also as to why I say karma, really got him, because this guy was going after just about everybody, really, really hardcore, and now it looks like he's the one. At the end of the day, he's out.
He was, in my opinion, and against stiff competition, the most incompetent minister of defence, certainly in my lifetime, and probably in British history. I mean, we haven't had actually a minister of defence in Britain since 1940. The first real minister of defence was, in fact, Winston Churchill during the war. So Gavin Williamson is no Churchill. He was a complete joke. I mean, he made absurd comments like, Britain standing up to China in the South China Sea. Britain standing up to China in the South China Sea. I mean, crazy stuff. And he also said that he famously once said to Russia to shut up and go away. I mean,
yeah, quote, frankly, Russia should go away and it should shut up, unquote.
Yeah. Unquote. I mean, comments that even the most hardline people in Britain felt embarrassed by. I've heard stories about how there was no respect for him from the staff in the Defence Ministry, no respect for him from the people in the military. He wasn't apparently popular with his cabinet colleagues. He was widely seen as angling for Theresa May's job and taking on these extraordinary hardline positions in order to ingratiate himself with the very hardline people in the conservative grassroots. Apparently, he wasn't impressing them anyway. So far as Gavin Williamson is concerned, good riddance to bad rubbish.
Yeah, and now Gavin Williamson, I mean, we talked before the video, and you mentioned that Gavin Williamson was one of the people that went hard during the Skripal case, hard on Russia, that is, without any evidence whatsoever. And now it looks like he's getting sacked without any evidence. But get into the reasons as to why he's getting sacked.
Yes. I mean, there is
why this really is karma at its best.
Yes. I mean, there is actually delicious irony in all of this, because what happened, as we remember, during the Skripal affair is that shortly after the Skripals were poisoned, Theresa May, before the police investigation had got properly underway, stood up in the House of Commons and said that the Russians were guilty and that there was no credible alternative conclusion. So she said on that basis that the Russians were guilty, and she's refused to back off from that at any time. Now, Williamson supported that position in the most extreme way. I mean, he was one of the most relentless propagators of the theory of Russian involvement in the Skripal affair. Now, what has happened? The reason he's been sacked is that a little while ago, the National Security Council, which is actually a subcommittee in Britain of the British Cabinet, of which Gavin Williamson as Defence Minister was a part, decided that Huawei, the Chinese mobile phone and electronics company, should be allowed to provide 5G technology in Britain, and that the US pressure to ban Huawei completely should be resisted. Now, this was leaked by someone to the Daily Telegraph. And Theresa May carried out an investigation and said that this person was Gavin Williamson. He emphatically denies it. What has happened now is that Theresa May uses almost exactly the same words as she's used in the Skripal affair. She says no credible alternative explanation exists other than Gavin Williamson carried out the leak, and on that basis he's been sacked. And of course the full investigation that Gavin Williamson was asking for was never done. and he's now bitterly complaining that he was subjected to a kangaroo court and that due process was not followed. So he's been subjected to exactly the same process by Theresa May that Theresa May subjected to the Russians to during the Skripal affair, and which Gavin Williamson then backed. So he has now been caught, burnt by the same thing. And frankly, I have no sympathy for him at all.
All right. Now who does have sympathy for him in the government or in the Conservative Party? Are they pretty much backing May, or
no? This is it. This is it. This shows, in my opinion, how bad Theresa May's position is and how unpopular she's become, because I don't think anybody in the Conservative Party or in the Conservative government or in the Conservative parliamentary party actually has much time for Gavin Williamson. As I said, I think he was seen as a vain and incompetent minister and something of an intriguer. And I think many people think that he probably was the person who leaked the Huawei information. I, by the way, think that. But because they don't like Theresa May, several Conservative MPs now, and even some Conservative ministers, are coming forward and say that the sacking was inappropriately done because due process was not followed. These are, of course, the same people who, in the Skripal affair, cheered on the government when it ignored due process in that case. But now that it affects a Conservative cabinet minister, they suddenly profess to be concerned about it. Absolutely.
So what happens now is does Gavin Williamson disappear, or does this weaken May further?
I think this is a spat. I don't think anything much is going to come of it. The only thing I'm going to say is there is some suggestion that the police should become involved and that the police should investigate this leak, because technically this leak was a criminal offence, actually a very serious criminal offence. And people are saying, if Gavin Williamson really did it, why weren't the police called in? Why weren't they given the chance to look into this? So there's just a chance that might happen. And the people who are pushing for that are Theresa May's opponents within the Conservative Party. She is resisting that idea with every single ounce of authority that she still has left. I think she will prevail on this one because, as I said, I don't think people care enough about Gavin Williamson or like him enough to really push for this. So I think this little thing will be over. But I think the lesson to take from it is, what a bunch of hypocrites! I'm sorry to say.
Exactly. What a bunch of
Conservatives, the Conservative parliamentary party, and the Conservative ministers and the Conservative cabinet ultimately are. As I said, due process is a big issue when it applies to them. When it applies to the Russians or people they don't like, it can be safely done away with.
Or Assange, or any people like that. Yeah.
Or Assange, whatever. Exactly. But that, for me, is the true moral of the story.
And now, what about Huawei? What's going on there? Does this mean that May is not going to allow the 5G, or
no, she's going?
Do we know what's going to be happening there?
She's going to allow. Apparently, I mean, the British have looked into this, and apparently they made a decision that they're going to work with Huawei on 5G up to a certain point. Some areas will not be that Huawei would not be allowed to be involved in, but generally most of the applications of 5G that most British consumers come across, Huawei will be there.